Good morning, LinkedIn. Good morning, Facebook. And we are also live into YouTube today. So here we are on Wellbeing Wednesday. And welcome, everybody. We are here, my colleague and myself, Will Murtha. Welcome, Will.
Good morning, Carrie. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Authenticity and courage, which are very closely linked, as we know. They've got a good partnership, and we're going to explore that today. And I think we're going to give some good little tips as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so as usual, we have picked a topic which we see is relevant almost every day for our clients between myself and Will. We are going to trek through it in the way that we always do. And obviously, as usual, we will be giving you, as Will says, hints, tips, tricks, ways to incorporate this into your life and to really notice how it's showing up and notice how you're showing up. So without further ado, Will, I'm going to hand over to you. What we want to do first of all, what is courage and authenticity? Because we see business models, we see the terms linked together everywhere. There's whole pages and whole philosophies designed to working through courage and authenticity. Break it down for us, will you? What is it?
So what we're trying to do is break a million bits of information down and put it into half an hour, aren't we?
Oh my goodness, there goes my dog again. I'm going to let her out.
I think courage and authenticity, as far as society goes, I think that we need it more than ever. We need to, we're looking for courage. We're looking for authenticity in people more than ever. I was just saying, Carrie, that we need authenticity and courage in society more than ever. It craves it. We want honesty and truth from people, and we want people to speak up for their truth. I think that is really becoming evident. And I think if authenticity is the philosophy, the way I see it is that courage is the verb, the doing, the action of coming from our values. So authenticity is living our true values, our principles, our worth. It's what I call into our sports people, our personal philosophy. What does that mean, though? That's great having that inside of us, but it's not until it's applied, till it's demonstrated, the verb courage. So, what does courage look like on the outside in a very simplistic perspective? Stepping outside your comfort zone, that's courage. Going beyond what you perceive is your limits of capability, and learning new skills and breaking through fear, that's courage. Putting your true thoughts and feelings out there into the public domain or sharing it in a group, even though it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to go against the status quo. Disclosing, forgiving publicly, putting your hand up and apologizing, taking risks, confronting failure, overcoming fear, dealing with rejection. All of these things are how courage show up, I believe.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I quite like this. I quite like this little definition. Authenticity is your ability to express your ideas, values, and beliefs honestly and being true to yourself. Because that's what it's about, isn't it? Really asking yourself deeply: is this me? Am I being honest, and am I doing myself justice here? And it's stepping beyond the fear. And I quite like the arc, the way that they all link together in terms of being authentic, living up to our values, responsibility, making sure that we have a balance with what we take on, not too much, not too little. So again, that we honor ourselves and others. And then being courageous, getting through the fear and the challenge to do the tough stuff, as you were saying. That's the verb, isn't it? And where we don't do honor to ourselves, it's where what you talk about, playing small, keeping your opinion to yourself at work, never challenging a decision or never challenging your boss because you're worried about authority. That's a big one that we see with people at work, isn't it? And then bowing to how we think other people are going to perceive us. And then us behaving actually not in our true self, but actually how we believe that other people are going to perceive us. And when you and I were talking before this, and one of the biggest examples of that I always coach through, and you do as well, is when we have people who are prepping for interviews and things. We don't tend to show up as ourselves with our set of questions and how we want it to go, but we show up in a sort of shape and style that we believe they want to see of us, don't we? So it's the result of that is that we stay small, we feel conflicted, we feel stressed. So in terms of where you see the downside, the flip of that, what would you say, Will?
Let's flip it all on the other side. So, not speaking up creates a pressure inside of you, doesn't it? It's almost like your heart, your soul, your spirit, your consciousness, your mind, whatever you want to look at. It knows when you play small. It knows when you don't speak up and have the courage to have that courageous conversation and name your truth. Oscar Wilde said it, didn't they? Be yourself because everyone else is taken. It's a great concept to go with. We're constantly trying to be someone else because we imagine that they've got values and principles and a persona and worth that is higher than us, that we're lower than them. And actually, Oscar Wilde absolutely got it. I think it was Mary Rademacher said, we've got this false belief that courage is the lion roaring. No, I think Mary Rademacher said that, courage is that acceptance that, I'll try again tomorrow. We've really got to get away from this sort of belief, haven't we, that courage is the lion, it's going into the den. Mary said it brilliantly. Courage just might be getting out of bed. Courage might be just try again tomorrow when you failed miserably the day before. So I think the opposite is that, not living your life fully, because if you're not being authentic, and we know from the book from Bronnie Ware, The 5 Regrets of the Dying, that the number one thing that constantly came up when she interviewed everyone in that palliative care environment was that, number one, I wish I would have lived a life that was true to myself and not what others, society expected of me. I think that's a great quote that we should all live by every day, because I think if we are not living our truth, our authenticity, and we're not expressing it in a courageous way by running away, suppressing our emotions, not having those courageous conversations, your heart knows deep down when you're not stepping up and stepping forward. We know.
It's a difficult one, though, isn't it, Bill? Because you and I talk about this a lot, because as we grow up, and as we go through our school system, which you and I both don't feel is fit for purpose in terms of preparing people for life.
As an understatement.
Exactly. These aren't the things that we're taught as children. And Jim Carrey, actually, he does a great, and I'd advise people to go and have a look at it. He does a great piece. I think it's on YouTube, and he talks about his father, and he says so many of us see our path out of fear disguised as practicality. And he talks about his father spent his whole life doing a career that he'd been guided into by his parents. And we follow this very strict path, don't we, in our society? We go through school, we get our exams, it's a stepping stone to getting our A-levels, it's a stepping stone to going. And actually, we have all these expectations put on us before we've even questioned who we are, what our values are, what we're about, what is the authentic me. We start down a path of doing rather than being, don't we? And being true to ourselves, that's not what's necessarily encouraged, is it? So when you and I talk about this with people, it's a new concept, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think, courage, authenticity is a bit like confidence. It's a bit like leadership. It's a bit like, all of these attributes, you don't just embody them. You learn and you develop a mindset. Like, years ago, do you remember 20, 30 years ago, we believed that natural leaders and confident people are born or not born. Yeah. Rubbish. You might start from 100 meters back from the start line compared to a lot of other people, but that does not mean that you have to be stuck there. And leadership, confidence, and particularly courage and authenticity, what we're talking about, they are attributes that can be trained, and you can train your mindset, which is thoughts and feelings, beliefs, perceptions. You can train to become more courageous. You can train your mind gradually to be more authentic. If you've come from an environment, which a lot of people do, they come from a family or a workplace environment that doesn't particularly endorse or champion authenticity. and you're the one that has to go rogue and actually change the directive, change the mindset, you know. And I love that when you speak to someone and they've become a circuit breaker. They've decided to not follow the company or the family model, which might be a lot of lying, holding back their truths, not always speaking up and having these big conversations and, you know, courageous conversations. You know, I had a client yesterday who was talking about a family, and, you know, a family seems someone that never argues, never has any, you know, outward sort of demonstration of anger or emotions or the rest of it. And all the problems that come from that by not having courage to speak up, by not having, you know, to put it out there that we're authentic and we can put our truths out there. All those problems that bubble under the surface are like trying to keep a beach ball below the water. It's still going to pop up. It's just you're going to waste a lot of energy trying to keep it down.
Yeah, and as I say, live half a life rather than a full life, because you're not being your true self. And I think it's really interesting that there is a flip side to this, because we talk about courage and authenticity, and, you know, they're both quite strong words. And Brené Brown talks about courage and authenticity really being our vulnerability, being prepared to show up and be vulnerable and show your true self. And I love that as well, because obviously we talk about this in two contexts. You and I both work within businesses and we work with individuals. But certainly in the business context and in the Great Reset, I spoke to a business yesterday where there's just the door is open and people are just flooding out, Will. And actually, it's because people are questioning for the first time what feels more authentic to them, what feels right for them. You know, what do I want here, rather than following something which deep inside doesn't align with their values. So I think in the context of businesses right now, it's about the leaders that you and I work with and about everybody else just thinking about authenticity, but authenticity with the vulnerability, you know, rather than just powering through with things. It's the questions, isn't it? It's opening up. And that becomes, for me, the result is clearly better connection, a sense of real people underneath the managers and the directors and everything else. It's not just a transactional level that we see with people, but actually this linking for me of humanity. When you have that authentic connection, you can feel the difference, can't you, Will? You can feel the difference.
Emotions, you know, what we're really talking about, the best bridge between people is honesty, authenticity, but it's emotion, isn't it? You know, we know when we're coaching people, we see it in our own lives, when someone has the courage to step up and talk about their authentic truth in a very open and vulnerable way, there is nothing more seductive than vulnerability and honesty, where you put your fears, your thoughts, your apprehensions, your worries out on the table. Oh my God, it's like polar, you know, it just sort of puts you in a different level, and sort of people then lean into you, because what they don't want is someone putting up a false persona of, you know, courage, and a false persona of this great lion, the great, that everything's great and the rest of it. What we've got to beware of, it's okay being courageous and authentic and putting ourselves out there, but if we do it in a way where we literally smash everyone else up around us because we've got no compassion for other people's feelings, then that connection breaks, which is the opposite of what you're saying, isn't it? In that, use your vulnerability, be courageous, be authentic, but here's the caveat, do it in a compassionate, empathic way, because you're not the only person on stage.
Yeah, well, I think the result is that you create, and we talk about cultures all the time, you create a very open culture, and you create a culture that you and I've talked about before here, that you're able to make mistakes because you are trying things out through being authentic, which sets a tone of acceptance and respect, doesn't it, with everybody there. But yeah, so let's come to that. Before we come to the how-tos, let's come briefly. You know, we talk about being authentic and being true to yourself, and we coach this with our clients all the time, you know, what feels right and how do we get to those decisions. But there have to be some checks and balances, don't there? Because authenticity without empathy can just be egotism. and it could cause big problems. So we have to be aware of how we put ourselves out there. And I don't know about you, but I always work with clients in a way when I say, well, you know, they say, well, I'm much better at that. Emails come in. I'm much better at looking at it. I'm much better at sitting with it. And then I say, well, how about, you know, run the answer by your personal philosophy. And you and I talk about your personal philosophy, your personal blueprint, your values. Run it by your values. And for me, I always say to them, so a week later, the email that you drafted back, the answer that you were going to say to your manager, would it still sit well with you? Yeah. If the answer is yes, well, you've absolutely acted authentically with responsibility, and you've taken that through honestly to yourself. If the answer is well, no, then obviously you're not acting authentically. But you can't just press the send without some sort of how is that received? We have to make what I call the landing spot ready for us to resonate and for them to resonate back, don't we, Will?
I mean, it's a great example. I'll give you a personal example from last night. So I live in I work in an office environment in the town where we live in Totnes, and it's a shared space that there's about 10 office suites. And you're meant to check out every night, and the last person that checks out locks up and sets the alarm. There's one person, and it's one person we know of, that won't look at who else is in the building, and they will keep locking up and they will keep putting the alarm on. Of course, that's all the problems. You get locked in. I've got to go around me and several other people go around the side door to come around the front. The alarm's going off at 8 o'clock at night, and it's really loud. And this one person, and this morning, late last night, I was just about to, in my head, cast this real vitriol sort of message that, what don't you understand? And I was going to write this in my head, and then I was going to send it last night. Typical example, I just held off. I thought, right, let the anger pass. In reflection of a lighter day, is that the right way of going about it? Publicly shaming her on the group chat, which the whole office group do. No, I need to go and see her privately, because there's a disconnect somewhere. But here's what emotion does. If you catch emotion in a minute, it's okay being authentic, because that was my authentic emotion at that moment.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have, particularly in the light of day now, thinking about it this morning, without a more rational, calmer head on it, it wouldn't have moved the thing forward. It would just make it worse. So we've got to think more holistically. We've got to think more strategically, and we've got to think more in a calmer way, that the end result is about moving the issue, the problem on, and not getting someone to dig their feet in, because they've been burned in public. And it wouldn't be the right thing for me either. I would feel bad about it.
Well, exactly. So it's in a way that aligns with your values, and it doesn't just align with your values in the moment, because sometimes in the heat of the moment, our values can be slightly different than actually our ongoing values and our personal philosophy. We've got a comment. We've got a comment here. Janine, thank you for joining us. I hope, I'm not sure if you're still here, but she says at 54, I'm still trying to find a job where I can be my authentic self.
So true, Janine.
My goodness me, we hear that all the time. And I guess I'd flip that and say, be your authentic self, and then find the job.
Align the energy to. I mean, Janine, it's really hard. We know we're coaching bosses and leaders and owners and entrepreneurs of businesses who are constantly now saying, "What can I do?" It's like a sieve. The company is leeching sort of people and struggling to find new best talent. What can I do? Best thing you can do as a leader or owner or manager, entrepreneur of a business, get your values and principles and authenticity in place, and then project that, and you will attract the right people. The companies that are losing people fast don't get it. They don't get it. And they may not ever get it, to the point of they go out of business.
Yeah. There's no sense of the whole, is there?
No.
Will. There's no sense of that. We're in this together. The communication is open. There's no sense of that joint respect and authenticity. So, Janine, I'd say if you're still finding a job, do the work on you, understand where you are, and then it's easier to place yourself. So, I'm conscious of the time, Will, as usual. So let's look at some of the how-tos. Yeah. What do we need to do? How do we work with our clients? I've got a number I know, and I know you have too. But so how do we find our own balance and our gauge and act with courage and authenticity?
Right, so I've got a couple of little tools that I would give to clients, and I'll come back to this again, journaling. So say, for instance, let's give you an example. That story I've just mentioned, imagine because I'm really happy that I learned from previous examples of not lashing out at the time the emotion rises. So I'm really pleased with that. So I go to my journal as a best practice, and I go to my journal and I divide the journal page up into top, middle, bottom. I write a little paragraph about what happened, and then the middle section of the page I write about how it made me feel, and then the bottom third I write about how I dealt with it. Because that was a best practice example. Now, if I had gone the other way and absolutely lashed out at this particular lady and done it and felt really bad about myself, again, I go to my journal because it's a great map of a blueprint of what not to do. So that's journal work. So anything to do when your courage and authenticity is showing up or not showing up, put it in your journal. It's either a great way of learning what to do or what not to do. The other one is simply questions. So you imagine if you take a compass around the world, wherever you take that compass, it will show itself to you to be its true north. Top of a mountain, bottom of the sea, a true magnetic compass will always show you true north. Now, all you've ever got to do is ask yourself questions. Is this situation, event, dilemma, is it working for me or against me? Is it coming to true north or making me come away from my true north as a person? Is it moving me closer towards where I want to go or further away? Is it, helping me to become and align with who I am, who I really am? Or is it taking me further away from the true north of who I am and who I'm becoming? And all you've got to do, pay attention to your next thought, to your next feeling, to your next action and your next word. And is it moving me closer towards it or further away from it?
Yeah, I love that. And I do a little seesaw balance with clients sometimes in terms of authenticity. Where were you? And if people are feeling that they are hiding, they're not showing up, then I'll get them to do a tally over maybe the period of a week. So how can I increase that day by day? Where's the seesaw going? How do I move just incrementally to show up? Because look, let's be honest, in some situations, there's a lot of fear to get through before we show up as ourselves. So even if we do that incrementally, and again, it's journaling, it's a case of just noting. A client yesterday, I did it in a different way. She just having a crazy week, but something really is bugging her. And actually, in terms of being courageous and authentic on this particular point, we just wanted to note how many times it came up. So we just put a tally in her book, a tally on her fridge, so we could see how things were showing up and how she was going to then deal with them. So it's finding things that are right for individual clients, but sometimes we need an image. We need something that we can see, don't we, Bill? I guess you and I both work a lot with metaphors, but we also work with things that people can see. We think in images. Everything is in visuals. And sometimes aligning to our internal compass is all about, well, where do we see this? Where are we? How many times are we thinking about this? How are we dealing with it? So again, it's noticing the thought processes more than anything else, isn't it?
Paying attention. All you've got to think, where is this next thought, feeling, action, word? Now, when I talk about word, I'm talking about the word you express to others, but equally important, the word you speak to yourself, your inner critic or inner coach. So, it's in and out, and the word particularly, because once you take and express words outwards, like me, if I'd have lashed out last night, you can't take them back. It's a bit like an email. Once it's sent, and words are the same. So giving yourself that time, that reflection to just take a breath. Would I be proud of this next day, next week, once this email or once this word goes? That is mastery. Mastery is holding back to just think about it first.
Yeah. And you know, check your behaviors, as we've said, against your personal philosophy. It's a brilliant thing to have, because we don't have to any longer think, is this right or is this wrong? We run it by something which we develop as part of our values, which just gives us an answer, really. It's literally as clear as that. You know, one of mine, or part of mine, is to stand in and under my truth, which I guess is part of being authentic. So I know I frequently think, well, if I act like that, am I standing in and under my truth? Am I acting with compassion? I run it by that. I get my answer, which is a great way. And have the courage to voice your opinion in front of others. That's a big thing that people struggle with, Will, isn't it? You know, confronting people and issues and raising issues that are silenced. And my goodness me, we've definitely seen that over the last couple of years.
There's a whole show again.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of how to deal with it, we've given you a few bits, but really come into yourself, ask yourself the questions, stay in an uncomfortable place. And I really love this quote: managing crisis also through pre-work. Martin Luther King stated, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. So it's about, in those times, standing up, getting an idea of where you are, and then having the strength and the courage and the vulnerability to put yourself out there, isn't it, Will?
I just think, you know, just to finally wind it up, I think, you know, courage is really having the ability in your own self, trust in yourself, to move into the uncertain, the unfamiliar, and the unknown, because we're all moving into that. And that is courage, is stepping out of the certain, the familiar, and the known into its polar opposite.
Brilliant. Will, thank you so much this morning for your input. As usual, a fantastic conversation. If anybody has any thoughts, any input, any ideas, or anything that they want to run by us, you can contact us on all three platforms. We're active on all, or obviously that you can find us. Through DMs as well. So we hope you've enjoyed this. We'll be back next Wednesday, Wellbeing Wednesday, a whole new topic. Will, thank you so much.
Take care, and see you next week.